our second part here of chapter 1, we're just continuing on with what we were talking about. Here in section 1.4, now we're looking at how we study nutrition. So bringing up a little bit of math, and we'll get into kind of the scientific method. So we'll be using some calculations. So a little bit about our calories. So calories are defined as the amount of heat it takes to raise a temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. I am never going to ask you that on a test, but just to kind of put it into perspective, or so you have an idea of what that means. So tiny measures of heat so that food energy is more conveniently expressed. A lot of times we call that a kilocalorie, and kilo is 1,000 calories. So again, if you hear that term, just think a lot of calories from the food. So again, it's typically expressed whenever we are talking about food. It releases a lot of calories, so we call them kilocalories. All right, if we, again, had mentioned these before, but with our carbohydrates and our proteins, they both give us about 4 kilocalories per gram, and fats about double that. They give us 9 kilocalories per gram. Now, your book goes into a good bit about alcohol. We're not really covering that in here, but if you're interested in that, it's certainly good information to have. But if you're consuming alcohol, alcohol provides about 6 kilocalories per gram. So lots of energy, lots of calories are released from alcohol consumption. All right, so if we look at this, and again, you will need to be able to do this on your assignments and on a test. So if you are told what somebody is given, you should be able to kind of figure out what their total calorie would be. So if we look at this one, so we have our nutritional label up here. So if we just look at our carbs, our fats, and proteins, we see that from the serving of whole wheat bread, we get 81 kilocalories of energy that's released. And that's because our total carbohydrates up here, we have 15 grams of carbs. So we're going to multiply that by 4 because it gives us 4 per gram. If we look at our fat, we have 1 gram of fat. So we're going to multiply 1 by 9. And then whenever we look at our proteins, we see proteins here have 3 grams. So we're going to multiply that one by 4 as well. And then we're going to add all those up. And you're going to see that we get about 81 kilocalories from each. So essentially, of course, we see here on the calories, it lists 81 or 80. So that suggests that they're kind of rounding down. So they're not giving the precise, but more of an estimate. Right, again, just another example here from our grilled chicken. We have 46 grams of carbs, so we multiply that by 4. 14 grams of fat, multiply that by 9. 45 grams of protein, multiply that by 4. No alcohol on our grilled chicken. So it gives us a total of 490 kilocalories. Right. Also, percentages get used a good bit. So this, again, just some basic math here for us. That is parts per 100. So if you see 80%, that's really 80 over 100. Okay, so it's 80 out of 100. You can also see this, you move that decimal 2 places, so that's also going to be 0.80. Okay, so all of that means the same thing as 80%. So just so you can kind of put that in perspective as you see percents. All right, so again, just kind of looking at our example here. So if we are told that we have 6% of 45 to calculate that. So if we have 45 of means times, so we're going to multiply that. So 45 times, and again, 6%, if you're putting that in a calculator, you wouldn't want to put in 6. This is where understanding what a percent is important. It's 6 over 100. So whenever we do that, we need to move that decimal. We don't really see the decimal here because we don't need it, but we're going to move it 2 places because it's over 100, which has 2 zeros. All right, so we're going to multiply that 45 times 0.06, and so 6% of 45 would be 2.7. So then if, on your own here, calculate what the percent would be of 90, what the percent of 99, what percent of 99 is 3. So you can do it the other way too. So we can work it backwards where you would need to divide this one. All right, so here's our example here. So Joe ate 15% of the adult recommended dietary allowance of iron. So it was recommended to have 8 milligrams at lunch. So then how many milligrams did he actually end up eating? So again, he ate 15% of 8, so we're going to multiply that. So you can work on those sample calculations, see if you can come up with the right answer. Right, also our metric system is really important. So some of the basic units in the metric system, so we have meters. We're used to inches more in the English system. So meters are for length, but grams we get for that weight of our food. So we talk about kilocalories per gram. And then also we'll see liters that help us give volume. Some of the prefixes, kilo, we already mentioned. So kilocalorie is 1,000 calories. Centa is 1/100, so it's a smaller amount. And then milli would be 1/1,000. And then micro is the smallest, it's 1/1,000,000. So just to kind of put some of these into perspective as far as roughly how much they are. All right, so if we see our metric system here, so again, a gram is about 1/30th of an ounce. So it takes 28 grams to get us to 1 ounce. Therefore, 5 grams of sugar or salt is about 1 teaspoon. And then 1 gram, again, just putting those prefixes, is 1,000 milligrams, and it's 1,000,000 micrograms. Pounds is something we're more used to, especially with our weight. So converting that, so 1 pound is about 454 grams. Again, kilogram, just like kilocalorie, that would be 1,000 grams, which is about 2.2 pounds. So if we're thinking about kilograms, we're talking about 1 kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. So we divide the pounds. So if somebody weighs 150 pounds, you would divide that by 2.2 to get it to kilograms. Also with the metric system, liters. So milli is 1,000, so 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters. A teaspoon is about 5 milliliters. So you'll see this a lot on, like, especially on different medications. You'll see both of those kind of used interchangeably. A cup is about 400 or 240 milliliters. And then a quart is equal to 4 cups, which is about 1 liter. So this would be more talking about like the amount of blood that somebody would have. And then centimeters. So centa is 1/100 of a meter. Also 2.54 centimeters is an inch. So just, knowing and being able to use some of these terms and calculations will be needed for some of your questions. All right, now if we look at section 5, this is getting into the scientific method. So if you've had some other science classes, or even in psychology, this gets talked about as well. So hopefully this one might be a review for you, but if not, you'll get to learn it again. All right, so the scientific method, and depending on which book you look at or which picture you pull up online, you might see a few different numbers of steps. They all use the same general idea. They just kind of separate things out a little differently. So we'll be consistent with what's being used in your book. So the first thing is making observations that then generate questions. So noticing something and asking a question about it. From there, we can generate a hypothesis, which is an educated guess or a probable answer to our question to explain those events. Then you would, review current scientific literature. So if you've seen this before, this step doesn't always get included, but you would do some background information, kind of looking around. And then you would actually design your study and perform the experiment, collect the data or the test. Then in step 5, once that experiment's done, you would analyze your data, draw some conclusions, and then you would share that with peers. So peer review is very important in science, so that we're not making false claims. Other people can repeat it, they agree within the scientific community. And then the scientific method really never ends. Once we answer one question, we have more questions, or we need to keep doing it. So then we're just going to keep doing more research to either confirm or refute those. And eventually, you know, depending on what we're studying, we can even develop theories from that. All right, so just some of the terms again: hypothesis, just a tentative explanation, possible answer. Another term that we talk about, especially with nutrition, is epidemiology. So this is the study of how disease rates vary. So again, if we're looking at COVID cases or heart disease cases, so how many new cases there are over time, is that increasing or decreasing? That's all part of epidemiology. All right, now if we look at kind of this hierarchy of scientific evidence, so what's really good evidence and what's, you know, evidence that maybe not the most reliable. So the weakest is at the bottom. So editorials, opinions, you know, those vary. That's not really based necessarily on a lot of data. It's very, you know, can shift quite easily. So that's kind of the weakest link. At the top is what is referred to as meta-analysis and systematic review. So this is using meta, meaning a lot of analysis, a lot of data, and lots of review. So lots of people involved in it, a lot of peer review. That's where that evidence is the strongest. We can put the most certainty in that. Can it be wrong? Of course, but it's the most kind of strongest evidence that we can obtain. And then there are different levels down through there that you can look at as well. All right, so kind of pulling out a few of them. Again, meta-analysis, this is the best. So this is that statistical examination of data. Again, multiple studies, not just one, but lots of them, all about the same thing, coming up with some type of trend to occur. Then we can have randomized controlled trials. So these are going to be double-blind and placebo. So double-blind means that neither the person giving the medicine or the person receiving it knows whether you're getting the actual drug or a placebo, which is a fake drug. It doesn't have an active ingredient, but they're still receiving something. So if nobody really knows what's happening except for somebody that's not really involved, that's referred to as a randomized control. Again, double-blind just means that neither the participants, or the researchers know whether they're getting the actual active ingredient or the placebo. And then our control group, those are the ones who are not given the treatment, so they would get that placebo or that inactive. So they're still getting something, they're just not getting the active ingredient. All right, some of the types of experiments that can be used, so just observing things, noticing, especially within physicians. Case control studies can be used, of course, animal studies in the lab, human studies, so clinical tests, epidemiology studies, so again, that's looking at the trends, the increases or decreases in rates. All of these can be used to obtain data. So if we kind of look using obesity as an example of all of this. So if our question here is, does obesity threaten our future? So obesity by definition is just the ratio of weight to height is significantly higher than associated with optimal health. So it's typically due to an excess body fat, BMI, that metabolic rate, more than 30, we want it to be around 25, so more than 30 is considered obese. About 2/3 of Americans and 1/3 of children are overweight or obese. So this is becoming quite a significant factor. It is causing a lot of health issues, which then create a lot of money issues dealing with the health issues. So again, about 40% of adults are currently obese. So, you know, what are the consequences of that? So again, this leads to a lot of chronic diseases, meaning they don't go away. They're there once you get them. Heart disease, again, #1 leading cause of death. Obesity also increases the chance of stroke, high blood pressure, cholesterol, increased chance of getting diabetes or arthritis, puts a lot of weight and a lot of pressure on your joints. And even different cancers are related to obesity, as well as becoming an economic burden. Again, taking care of those individuals. And just a little link here, of course, as we're still talking a lot about COVID, it's never going to go away. But as we learn more about it, there seems to be a link where there was a higher risk of developing severe symptoms and complications of those who were obese. Again, that's what's so weird about COVID, is that, you know, two people who seem pretty much in the same health, one can have horrible symptoms and the other one barely notices anything. So as we unwrap and learn more and more about COVID and why some people were reacted more than others, this is one thing that's popping up now, is obesity does seem to increase your chances of having a worse reaction or infection from COVID. And this is just kind of looking at, this is not a test question, just kind of putting things into perspective, but just looking at the percentages where obesity is most, and you can see kind of toward the middle of the United States, a little bit there on the east. Unfortunately, West Virginia pops right in there as well, but kind of more in this little beltway here toward the middle. And then, of course, Middle America overall still above that 30 BMI, including Maine, and then the West Coast, and a little bit here into the New England states is where we see kind of the least amount of individuals who are obese. All right, so now if we're looking at some of these eating patterns, so again, we're seeing all these numbers. What these dietary surveys have shown is that about 16% of calories in the American diet come from proteins, which that actually is hitting into the advised, which is a pretty big range, so 10 to 35, so that's pretty good. About half of the kilocalories are coming from carbs, again, toward the lower end, but we're still within that advised range. About 34% coming from our fats. That's what's going to more to the high. So we're not getting quite enough of our carbs that we see up here. We're on the lower end of that, but we're on the higher end of what's recommended for the fats. So then if we keep looking at some of these, so some of the improvements that are needed. So again, as we learn more about this and, you know, we increase education, choosing plant sources of protein over the animal proteins. And that's mainly because of the saturated fat that gets linked to the animal proteins. Again, choosing those plant oils over animal fats, eating more nutrient dense foods. So instead of empty calories, where you're consuming a lot but not getting much out of it. So high, you know, energy packed foods, balancing intake with our calorie needs. So that's where that exercise comes into play, or just not eating more than what we need. And then moderation of sugar and salt, as well as alcohol intake is important. And then increasing the quantity and variety of fruits and vegetables to give us those minerals and vitamins and some of those phytochemicals. All right, so because obesity is becoming such an issue, Healthy People 2030 was developed. So these are some health objectives by the United States. So this is a plan by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Resources. They came up with this in August 2020. And they came up with this Healthy People 2030 initiative. And there are 5 kind of topics that led this. So health conditions, so improving those. Also health behaviors, so the way that we think about it and act about our health. Looking at different populations, so those, again, thinking about food availability or economics. Looking at settings and systems is an issue with that, and then as well as social determinants of health. I mean, you can go to this website and learn all about this plan that was set out in 2020. All right, so the goals of that, number 1 was to obtain a healthy, thriving lives and well-being free of preventable disease, disability, injury, premature death. Eliminate health disparities between individuals, so providing health equality, giving everybody equal opportunity, also health literacy, so education, so improving that for everybody. creating social, physical, and economic environments that promote everybody getting to their full potential, promote healthy developments, healthy behaviors, and well-being across all ages, so from infancy to adulthood. So then if we look at these healthy eating objectives, so reducing food insecurity and hunger, eliminating low food security in children. So there are a lot of initiatives in school now that help provide meals to individuals. Of course, they get on a reduced income, they can get free lunch or breakfast, but then what happens when they go home? So working with those. Also reducing the iron deficiency that we're seeing, and then increasing proportions of schools that don't sell less healthy foods and drinks. So we definitely are seeing that in our schools. So then again, kind of looking at some more of these, increasing that consumption. So increasing our fruits and vegetables, again, all those phytochemicals and all the other minerals and vitamins in there, increasing whole grains, calcium and potassium, as well as vitamin D, while decreasing sugar, saturated fat from those animals, and our salt or sodium. All right, so some of the objectives were met or improved already. So very few food security, very little was seen in the past 12 months once this text was published. Increase, kind of the increase in whole grains has been seen. The percent of total calorie intake from solid fats and added sugars is looking okay. And then the calcium intake, and then schools not offering those, again, sweetened beverages, so not having a pop available. So unfortunately, a lot of the other ones, there was little or no detectable change for many of the other objectives that were on that. So while there was some improvement that we can see here, there's still a long way to go. All right, so then our last section here, so just what we can expect from good nutrition. So why is it important? So again, healthy weight, so preventing obesity to begin with. And that starts with developing those good lifestyle habits that aim to live in a place with the opportunity for physical activity. Also, access to fresh fruits and vegetables is important. Joining different running and walking clubs, so just an active community. Grocery stores that have a good selection of fruits and vegetables and healthy foods. And then choosing restaurants that have healthy options as well. Then ways to allow for a longer, healthier life. So North Americans live longer and enjoy better general health. Many, though, have better health care and dietary patterns. However, there are some who have more sedentary lifestyles, again, have diets with lots of animal fat, salt, and alcohol that counter that. Also, better technology and greater choices can provide some better eating patterns. There are a lot of apps now that kind of track your calorie intake. That's a great way to kind of keep track and keep ourselves kind of honest and accountable. If we look at our total dietary pattern, so there really aren't good or bad foods. So, it's thinking more things about, moderation of food. So some foods provide relatively few nutrients compared to others, but we don't necessarily call them good or bad. We kind of look at it from a nutrient standpoint. So health is largely, though, your responsibility. So if you're taking this class, you're an adult at this point. So again, we can't blame our parents anymore. We're the ones making choices about our foods. So we offer what it needs, and it will serve you well. So some of the kind of recommendations for everybody for having a good healthy dietary pattern, again, consuming those essential nutrients, the carbs, the proteins, and the lipids, including fiber in that, and then moderation, or while moderating our energy. So again, being active or not consuming more than what we need. Also decreasing or moderating solid fats cholesterol, the sugar, and the alcohol intake. All of these can help us develop better healthy patterns. And then also, of course, increasing our physical activity. So regular activity, at least 30 to 60 minutes, most or even all days, is important, as well as just lifestyle. So minimizing alcohol intake. So recommended no more than 2 drinks a day for men or 1 for a woman of all ages, and not smoking. Cigarettes or cigars, of course, then related to other issues with the lungs as well. So all of these things help us to create healthier, longer lives. But it is up to us to make those decisions every day.